You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today. But before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma. And it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. So a huge shout out to Governor Anatoby for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is presented by the Choctaw Nation. The Choctaw people have a rich history and a bright future. At the Choctaw Cultural Center, you can take part in a story 14,000 years in the making. Stroll through our immersive exhibits portraying Choctaw life from the moment our ancestors emerged from the Nani Weha in Mississippian homelands to the Trail of Tears, where we lost so many loved ones, and finally to the modern-day tribe making a positive impact on local communities throughout southeastern Oklahoma. Try your hand at our social dancing and stickball and learn more about our vibrant culture through demonstrations, workshops, and classes. The kids will have a blast in our Luxie Activity Center. The Choctaw Cultural Center is more than a museum. It's a living, breathing experience. Visit choctawculturalcenter.com to plan your visit. This episode is brought to you by Hope is Alive. Hope is Alive exists to radically change the lives of drug addicts, alcoholics, and those who love them. Join us on August 11th at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum for a celebration of hope featuring guest speaker Tim Tebow and musical artist Ben Fuller. Find out more and get your tickets at HIA10.com. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode, bringing you an epic story today. One of resilience, one of encouragement, one of sadness and success and all of the things. Mutual friend of us connected. Oh, and actually, no, we connected because of Leadership Oklahoma City. But my guest today is Mr. Stefanick. And we had a blast at Leadership Oklahoma City, right?
That's right.
We had 2 years of it.
That's right. We're the longest class ever.
Longest class ever because of COVID. So we got 2 years of it. I won't say what our unofficial tagline was because it's not appropriate for the podcast. But that's kind of where we first met. I kind of first learned a little bit about your story, and people who don't know Leadership Oklahoma City, every class you kind of get an opportunity to speak, right? There's 3 or 4 people each class, so each time we get together, they get up and tell their story. And I just remember listening to yours and thinking, I know we have 5 minutes, but this deserves a lot more than 5 minutes because there's a lot more to unpack. And also, getting into education and running schools, and then, you're about to start your own, right? You are starting your own.
That's right.
So excited to dive into all that. I know you're a huge OU fan, so I want to talk some OU football with you, how excited you are for the SEC, and getting off the back of a horrendous season. I will say that because it was not good. But yeah, a lot of cool things to talk about today. So I think we'll generally start it out at let's start with who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so been in Oklahoma a long time, since middle school, and been in education now for 12 years. As you said, I see myself as an Oklahoman, went to OU and love everything about it, but also love the work that our city in particular is moving towards in state and education. I think there's no question on we need a revamp in education in Oklahoma, and we need pioneers to do that in the state of Oklahoma. But a little bit about me and background-wise, I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in my childhood, and like you mentioned, not really the most positive childhood that most people would go through. A lot of situations with homelessness and drugs and abuse and gang-related activities, and eventually had I wouldn't say opportunity, but stepfather took the opportunity to bring me to Oklahoma, which has been kind of the saving grace for me. I am a prodigy of Mustang Public Schools. I know we talked about recently where kind of close by where we live. That inspired me to stay in state at OU at the time. So that's a little bit about me, where I'm at. Currently, I'm the superintendent of a charter district in Oklahoma City, which is Harding Independence Charter District. Currently, it's a 5th through 12th grade model. And the idea is that our belief and mission is that every student, regardless of where they come from, background, they have the ability to be successful in any post-secondary educational institution. And so that can be a challenge, as you can imagine, because all kids need different desires in a classroom, but we accomplished that, and we have success doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. People listening be like, oh, that's great, cool, that's the podcast over, but there's so much more to unpack, and you're a great storyteller, and there's a lot of lessons in it. So tell me a little bit about like the childhood, as much as you want to share about it, and just like how you can use that now to talk to the kids and impact the kids and teach them the lessons that you learned and the things that you've been through, because through hard times we build character, resilience, and life lessons there, but at the same time, like, it is not fun at all.
Yeah, I'll be glad to. So I grew up in a town called Lawrenceville, which is just a urban kind of city. Imagine it to be like, I wouldn't say Edmond, but like midtown of Oklahoma City. Very low socioeconomic environment. School system was extremely poor. I believe today it's still poor. And at one time, it was particularly in my early middle school years and even elementary school. So imagine just an elementary student, 8, 9 years old, going through this situation, which we have thousands of kids going through in Oklahoma. So perspective there is a time where it wasn't a safe environment to go home, right? In terms of drug and abuse, and kids naturally will either it's fight or flight, right? And I took the flight approach. If anyone knows me, I'm not the kind of fighter. I am the fighter in words, not the fighter physically. And I flew away into slept many nights in a park called Arsenal Park. It's actually a historical park. It's a World War II site. And they just had a playground with one of those tubes that you usually crawl through, and the tubes that I slept in for many months because they gave free food in the evening in that same park, right? You would think that an 8-year-old, 9-year-old that was getting free food in the park, that there'd be red flags, but it was kind of the norm in that city, right? So, and in particular, to go a little further, kind of survival of the fittest, those young adolescents or children, would sort of pick kind of their own dumpster, right? And I think we get frustrated when we go to the stores and they're throwing away quality food because the expiration date just went out, right? Except for milk. Stay away from the milk, right? But other food's usually generally okay. And I picked one in particularly right behind Subway. And Subway, as you can imagine, throws a lot of good quality bread that maybe stale a little bit, and meats and kind of vegetables. You can pull away the cheese from the mold. And it was kind of my saving grace for a short time. But I was, at the same time, I was delivering, I believe it was drugs. Obviously, I was 8 years old. I don't really remember what it was, but it was some kind of white powder to be able to get even more food at a Tony's Pizzeria. So I was doing some work for, I guess, the gangs in that area. But further on with that Subway, you see why I went in education is because there's always someone in your life that kind of flips the script on where you're going to be in your lifetime. And I can remember there was a manager at that Subway that really took the reins in my life and figured out who I was and what I was doing. And he had one mission. He said, do your best, forget the rest, and never give up. And from that day forward, while I was having those hard times, he fed me a meatball sandwich, a bag of Cheetos, and a Coke every single evening, but on one condition. I was not allowed to skip school, right? Because he kind of knew the pathway. If I was successful in school, I'd be out of that kind of lifestyle. And so that's kind of my backstory about Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and why that translates to today. Talking to students is, every student has a story. Every person has a story, and the ones that have a glass ceiling are the ones that need help the most. So let's talk about what a glass ceiling kind of means. They can see where they want to go. They can see the future, but there's just a barrier that they can't get past due to socioeconomic status, due to home life, what that is. And if I'm able to change one kid's life, hopefully I can change thousands. That's the goal. But if I can change one each year, right, and let them break through that glass ceiling and they become the next, Mike doing their own podcasts, etc. I find success in that, and that's one less poverty kind of child that we have to worry about in Oklahoma.
Yeah, shout out to the guy at Subway, right? And you connected with him after, right?
That's right. We're still friends today. Yeah,
he's amazing.
He's 83 years old today.
Is he still in Subway?
He's still alive, yep.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. So at that point then, when, kind of he's telling you about education and go to school, and that's kind of, if I go to school, I'm going to get food at the end of the day. Is that the earliest time that you see education as a way out?
That's right. So education, I think sometimes we only pinpoint kind of the high school, middle school ages because they're more they're an adolescent. They can speak more of their mind. We tend to forget the young ones who can't speak their mind and don't have the language to do that. And in the state of Oklahoma, I believe the statistics may be different now, but 1 in 5 kids are, going home hungry every day. And what's that measure? I'm not sure. You could ask the Oklahoma Food Bank and such of those statistics, but that's powerful because they're not just even talking about the age level of those kids. So I can't imagine if there's a 6-year-old that's a kindergartner that's not going home being fed, which is the power of why schools. I thought while COVID had some challenges for schools, the one thing that schools did really well, it was free food, right? I'm a big believer that how can we find a way to give kids kind of free food? Because let's be real, I get hangry when I'm hungry. A lot of people do. If we're hungry, we're not going to learn. We're definitely not going to be able to communicate with others, right? We're focused on one thing, and that's your basic, what you may have heard of as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You got to get those basic needs before we can even start the education process.
Yeah. So you're in Pittsburgh, you're going to school. Is there a time, like how long do you mentioned kind of being homeless for a few months, like what happens after that? Like you're going to school, like where do we go after that?
Yeah, so after a few more months, at some point my stepfather, who I always believe is my real father, found out the situation. He lived in Oklahoma at the time. I moved from Pittsburgh to here when I was a child, and he stepped in and brought myself and my mother to Oklahoma, where I started kind of a life here. And it was a different kind of life. I went from a life where I could go anywhere I wanted, any time of the day, do whatever I wanted, right? To I couldn't even go a block down the road to 7-Eleven and get an icy. I had rules where the lights, when the street lights came on, I better been home. And it was kind of a different culture shock. But one thing I do remember is my stepfather, including some of my family members that were teachers in Mustang, if the expectation was X, they made sure the school gave me X and Y to do. They said, look, he may be 5 reading levels below due to his past experiences, but he has the same capabilities of all others. It's just going to take more time. Did I appreciate it at the time? Absolutely not, right? Be given 2 books instead of 1 to read, being challenged in that way. But when I got eventually a full ride to the University of Oklahoma, it kind of full circled on. That wouldn't have happened if, number one, the Subway manager didn't start the process, but then kind of my stepfather and that family there pushed me through the way in Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's a huge blessing, right? Like, because you could have come down here and just been, hey, you're in school, the school will take care of you, they'll get you up to speed, which we know the Oklahoma school system, right? It's, if you have a kid who's coming in that isn't a problem but might take extra work, sadly, it's down to the teacher, and sometimes the teachers don't get paid to do that.
That's right.
Sadly, they don't get paid much at all.
That's right.
So, but to have that kind of, have a parents and have that figures that just say, no, like you can double up, you can get him up to where he's at, and kind of build that just, learning skills around you. And then, you get that they're reinforcing your learning, right? They're reinforcing your success in learning. And then you kind of probably slowly fall in love with it. And like I said, it comes full circle and you get a full ride to OU.
That's right.
What was your full ride for?
Full ride was for academics, and Oklahoma has a fantastic program. At the time, it was called OAP. Okay. Don't ask me what that acronym means, but that's what it was back then. Now it's called Oklahoma's Promise, and so actually any student that receives basic requirements, like maybe a 3.0 GPA, meets the state requirements on credits, and they have a certain poverty level. So I think today it's $50,000 for household income. They get free tuition at any public institution in the state of Oklahoma, and they get a discount rated at private schools. And the goal of that program is really to keep our best and brightest in Oklahoma. In 2007, when I graduated, it was the first cohort for that. So OU gave me free tuition, free books, and then the academics I had at Mustang Public Schools got me several grants to just get room and board for free, which ended up being a full ride package. So that scholarship's still available, and the state funds it. I mean, it's a multi-million-dollar scholarship that I'd encourage any student that can apply for that to get it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And it's probably, hopefully everyone knows about it, right? Like, I don't want, this podcast is a small blip in the world, but like if somebody doesn't know about it and now they find out, they should get involved and figure that out, because in school and school's not cheap, right? And just to be around those people and be on a level playing field at university and not having to worry about how I'm going to pay for my books or my room or go for food. I mean, it's not cheap.
Yeah.
To do that, and then you get there and you're like, right. That's like the first day of the rest of my life kind of situation. That's
right. And it's such an easy process. You just have to do it before your junior year.
Yeah.
So 8th grade through junior year, you just prove to the state that you make below a certain amount of income, and boom, as long as you don't get in trouble, you make those grades.
Yeah.
And let's be real, a 3.0 is not hard to do.
Right.
Unless you're at a kind of competitive school in Oklahoma, that's pretty easy to do. And yeah, you get to go to OU, OSU, any of those colleges of your choice.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. So what is kind of like the dream when you're in high school and you think, I'm and you find out I'm going to OU, like, what do you want to do? What's like the, I want to be this when I grow up. Did you have an idea? I mean, I know you just said your family members are teachers. Did you know straight away that was the plan?
I didn't. I have an uncle that is really high in the kind of engineering world, particularly in Oklahoma City with OG&E. And I was always gifted in mathematics, so I thought I would just follow his path. And I originally went to college, though, and majored in math education. I knew I liked math. I loved school and kids. But as you just pointed out a little bit ago, the fear of income is what kind of drove me away from education for a short time. So I actually changed my majors about 7 times in college. There was a joke at kind of a Christmas. They'd have a wheel and say, what is Stefanick going to be today? And so I started at math education, went to pharmacy, went to a bunch of engineerings, realized that while I was gifted at the math, I couldn't stand being in solidarity. Definitely was not interested at the time going back to school for more pharmacy kind of school. And my uncle sat down with me, and I respect him quite a bit. And he just said one line, and it kind of clicked for me. But he said, he's a multimillionaire. He's doing great for himself. And he said, I just retired, and I'm finally happy. And it kind of clicked for me real quickly. That's all he had to say. And what spoke to me is, don't do something that you're not going to be able to wake up to an alarm every day and go do. And so I kind of thought back about it on, if he's unhappy doing his job, how much do I want to do that job, and what career path is it going to be? And then eventually I just told my family, income or not, I know I'll be successful being a teacher, and being a math teacher in particular, I went that route.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of people wouldn't have they wouldn't have felt bad or doubted you or whatever it is if you'd have just said, I don't know if that's the right word, but I can't think of anything right now. But like, they wouldn't have been, by you saying, hey, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a pharmacist, because of the way that you were raised and the way that, you know, your experiences you had growing up, it would have been fine if you just said, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to make as much money as possible.
That's right.
Because of the things that I didn't have growing up, and with a giant chip on your shoulder, with a big middle finger to the world, and say, I'm going to show this world what I can do. Right?
That's right. Absolutely.
And if it didn't have that conversation with your uncle, maybe you would have been that. But like you said, you might not have been happy.
Right.
Which is the key to everything.
Well, yeah, if you think about it, I tell students this all the time. You know, they're in education from 5 years old to 18 years old, 13 years of their life. They think it's forever, which we wish we could go back to those easy years, right? Yeah. And the conversation I always have to them is, look, you got 13 years of K through 12, you got maybe 4 years of college. You may do more, but let's just assume the kind of bachelor degree. So you got 17 total years. And you're going to be doing whatever you decide to do for the next 40 years of your life. Now, you may change a few times in that lifespan, but in general, you need to pick something that you're okay with doing for 40 years, right? This is nothing compared to what you're doing the rest of your life. And it's, you know, that conversation's kind of changed some kids. You know, every student at our school wants to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor. And it's funny when they become a senior how much they've changed. Said, you know what? I do want to be a teacher. Like I don't care about the income, or I do want to be a air traffic controller, and just having those kind of real conversations with kids. We need them as adults. Kids need them just as much.
No, you're right. It's and I've had some experiences like that as well, right? You just have that one conversation, and you know, like when you're 18 to 22, 23 years old, right? You're just like, you know, you're so green still, you know, and you, like I said, you meet an uncle or you meet a grandparent, and you're like, I mean, you've been in a job for 35 years. Like, tell me about it.
That's right.
You know, and I wish we could encourage kids more, and I wish kids did that more, right? Family occasions, you know, and dinners and Thanksgivings or whatever it is. Just go and ask your grandparents, like, what do you wish you had done? You know, do you have any regrets?
Right.
Because eventually, I mean, they will. Everybody has a regret at some point. You know,
That's right.
Not trying something, wishing they'd done something sooner. And then that saves us so much time, right? Now, how much time did that conversation with your uncle actually save you? Right?
That's right.
It saves you probably to changing your major a couple more
That's
times.
That's right.
Yeah. So you go into math education and become a math teacher.
Yeah.
How? What's the process from there? Where do you go to school? Like, where do you go back to Mustang to teach? Like, how is it really full circle to go back there, or I mean, what's the next in the process?
Not quite. I stayed in Norman. I went to Norman Public Schools for half a year. I got hired mid-year because I finished kind of mid-year through college. Had a wonderful mentor. I'll give her a shout out if she ever hears this. Ashley Thompson. She's not a teacher anymore, unfortunately. She's a professor now, which I respect professors as much, but I think the kids need it just as much as the adults. And but she kind of guided me and just left an open playing field. You know, really did not tell me what to do, kind of inspired me to think differently. I think, you know, in terms of math education, we can all remember that math teacher that went up to the board, back turned towards you, just wrote on that board all day long, and you took notes and grinded it out, right? Yeah. Which has caused a lot of people, including myself at the time when I was younger, to hate math, right? I don't get it. I don't understand it. And so I took a different approach. The first day of class, I just told the kids, look, my goal is not for you to be mathematicians. My goal is for you to walk out of this room in 6 months and say, I like math. Yeah. That's all I want you to do. I want you to appreciate and like it. You may not be good at it, but you understand it, you're confident. And so, you know, I don't learn this way. Kids don't learn this way. It's kind of lecture-based. I kind of did kind of activity-based, real-life experiences, bringing in kind of conversations about The Walking Dead and using that at the time when that was very popular with kids to teach them exponential growth and decay of a zombie apocalypse. And those kind of conversations, you know, I can remember a student, her name was Taylor, I won't say the last name for, you know, respect. At the end of the year, you know, I had them evaluate me in person, and that's hard. You know, you have 20 high school kids telling you what you're poor at, what you're good at, and I just said, just give it to me. And I even said, whatever you say, unless it's an inappropriate word, you can say it here, right? And Taylor, I expected, you know, she was really negative throughout the year, and first day of school, she said, you'll never make me like math. I can't stand it. And at the end of the year, she said, you know, I don't have anything bad to say. All I say is, I'm excited for math next year. And for me, that was a golden ticket right there. Today I have some negative things and I changed, but the things they said were so minor, and they were kind of inspired. And if you kind of read, I always do this every year. I love doing it, but on my Facebook and social media, I'll shout out at the end of the year and say, previous students or teachers, something you remember me, I'd love to hear from you. And it's never about a particular kind of lesson. I lectured a day. It's always about that crazy lesson I did, or not even a lesson. It's more about, I remember when I couldn't come to school and you drove to my house and picked me up, right? It's those stories that captivate and keep a student along, just like, the subway manager that kept me along. And so, I did it today just before I joined you, Mike. We already graduated our seniors, but one of them did not finish all their credits. July 1st is the deadline. That's when the new school year kind of starts, and it's June 30th. And we're supposed to be off today. It's Friday, and we give our principals and leadership off on Fridays. I wanted him to work for 3 hours, because if he didn't get it done today, he was going to be a dropout. He did finish at 12:37. But those extra things is what's going to project them to be able to help someone else later, which is just going to be, a branching effect for the community.
Yeah, and it, with everything that you do and that you've experienced and been through, this is the way that you're giving back, right? This is the way that you use what you love, you use what you're good at to teach these kids, life lessons through math. Right. It's not about math at all. Right. That's just a vehicle through building relationships and all the rest of it. And like I said, if you use Walking Dead, use OU football, whatever it is that you can to relate to them, to make them comfortable and make them, not hate the subject. Because I had a math teacher too, and he was great, and he's a golfer, so we connected straight away. One of the best classes. I'm not bad at math, but it's definitely not something I love doing. But at the same time, I had an accounting teacher in university, and all he did was back to us right on the board, and he just kind of copied notes, and we're like, I've learned nothing in an hour. My hand is sore, and I have a page full of notes I know nothing about. It could be French, just
That's right.
What am I doing here? So it was high school. You wanted to teach high school kids going into it. You didn't want to go younger. High school is kind of where you felt like you had more of an impact.
High school or middle school was kind of where I thought my biggest impact would be. Through college, had a lot of experience through student teaching, and you have to do a lot of hours in schools when you want to be a teacher, and a lot of that was in a middle school setting. I just had a very big passion on getting to the higher level, because yes, you can start them young. Traditionally, I'm not a good elementary kind of teacher. I love the kids, but day to day, that's kind of not my strength. Middle school and high school definitely was, but high school, you could almost have those real conversations. In middle school, you can start to do it, but you have to be very careful about their social emotional being. And you do at high school level too, but they're young adults at that point, right? They're driving. They're doing things they shouldn't be doing, and hopefully you don't know about it. They're thinking about next steps. Sometimes they're in relationships that are not, they're sour, and they need kind of guidance for that. And I kind of thought I could make a bigger input there, but I kind of got lucky at the same time. So I was at Norman for a semester. I left Norman Public Schools, not anything to do with the school itself, but there was an event that really took me off guard. So Norman's a pretty affluent town. Yes, they do have low SES kind of students, but overall they're pretty affluent. And math, our favorite holiday is Pi Day. Right, 3.14, and in Norman Public Schools, or Norman High at the time, that's where I was, they celebrated that day based on, buying pies and letting kids buy slices of pie. And what I noticed during that day is the affluent kids bought all the pie, right? The low SES students stayed in the corner and they didn't enjoy any pieces of pie. And that really turned me off, and I went to challenge the math department on how do we serve all kids. Now it's 2,000 kids. I get it's a hard task, but nothing is unreachable. It's only unreachable if you don't even try. And so I wanted to do something different, but they weren't amenable to it. They liked what they've been doing for a long time. So I realized that wasn't the place for me, and I wanted to serve kind of more low students anyway. And so math teachers are a rare breed. So I had probably 20, 30 job offers, one in Hawaii, which my dad is really mad I didn't take that job at the time.
I would be too.
Yeah, University of Hawaii, but that would have been exciting. But I ended up applying for Harding. Had no idea what Harding was. Charter schools were kind of new. I'd been in Oklahoma for 10 years, but no one really knew what they were. And I did it as kind of an interview to just practice my skills, interview skills. And walked in, and my first principal, Justin, he was at my wedding, so I can say his name is fine, Justin Hunt. He was a former math teacher, had a kind of same mentality I did, where the traditional rote memory learning is not going to work. And we just kind of clicked real quick. And I took a chance on a school at the time that I didn't have a whiteboard in my room. I didn't have pencils. I think I had 5 broken desks that, I had to tape up myself with duct tape. There was nothing in Harding. It was a very poor school. But the mission was any student that came there, regardless of where they come from, and a lot of students are low there, are going to go to college. Like, it was very sound. But I took the job for one reason. I told them about the Pi Day story, and I said, my goal is if I do Pi Day here, because they didn't do it at the time, every student, all 500, is going to get a slice of pie. I didn't say a whole pie. I said one slice, okay? And he said, look, I don't care what you do. I'll support you. That's your job. And, I stayed there even longer because 6 months later, Pi Day happened, right? Or 8 months later, whatever it was. And I convinced the parents of that school to donate probably 300 pies. I mean, it was amazing. There's pictures of it everywhere. And for one whole day, the kids got, free pie. I mean, I was giving pie away, full pies to teachers away. I had too much. Kids were hitting me in the face with whipped cream pies. It was just awesome. And that kind of, no student could say, I had a barrier and I wasn't able to, participate. They all got to participate. Now, did they all get to hit me in the face with pie? No. There was a particular student, that did a kind of a project ahead of time or something. So that's where I ended up being at Harding, and I've been there ever since now for 12 years now.
Yeah. And everyone goes to college?
Everyone goes to college, 100%.
Yeah. What's the difference with Harding compared to Norman, and other than the money? And the money, like the availability and the funds?
Yeah, so talk about charter schools in general, and then we'll talk more about Harding. So charter schools started in Oklahoma in 1998. The first one's actually the middle school we merged with just a few years ago, Independence Charter Middle School. And the idea was the families in Oklahoma at the time were not happy with the public options they had for education. And they believed at the time, if we could create our own school, show the giant system a different model, maybe the giant system would adopt it and all schools would be better. That was kind of the theory. 20 years later, what kind of happened is the traditional public schools didn't adopt what was working, right? And charters kept multiplying because they're not adopting. Instead, now the charters said, if you're not going to take away, then we'll just keep adding. And so at the time for Harding, there was in Oklahoma City public schools, there was one really great school, and people all know about it, Classen School, SAS, right? But they're a magnet school. A magnet means that you have to test to get into that school, right? So it's not for all kids. And so Harding Charter Prep was created because it was a kind of a college prep school, just like Classen, but there was no testing requirements. Every student could come in there. It's kind of competition with Classen, right? And then there was another school created called Harding Fine Arts, not affiliated together at all. They just shared a name, but it was the other piece of Classen, the fine art piece of it, that not everyone can get in Classen Fine Arts area. So let's do Harding Fine Arts Academy. And kind of the mission for Harding is, when I went to high school, probably for anyone, mainly that went to high school my age in Oklahoma, there's kind of 3 track of kids. Like, there's your general education classrooms. There's the smart kid classroom, right? It's an AP level, and you can only get into it if you test it well, et cetera. And then you even knew about the special ed classrooms, right? And if you weren't in them, you didn't see them much, but you knew that they existed, right? And so schools traditionally track students. And if you're on a track, you're stuck at that track. So if you are labeled as a general education student, good luck trying to get up to the advanced classes, unless you really go above and beyond. But let's be real, they're kids. They sometimes don't know how to do that. And so Harding's design was, it doesn't matter what track you're on. you're all on the same track for us. The difference is we have to be equitable, meaning that each kid may need different resources. So Mike, you may need 2 boxes to look over a fence at a baseball game. Well, I'm shorter than you, I need 4, right? And that's okay, but our level of expectation is not changing, right? And that's kind of the model for Harding. And so all kids are expected to take college courses. They take a minimum of 5 before they graduate. Some kids take 13, 14, which is awesome. And some kids only take the 5, and that's okay, right? But at the end of the day, just some statistics for this year. Our graduating class, 113 kids. So not very. Oh, sorry.
There it is.
Now you know who I'm biased to. Our 113 kids, 100% got into college. Whether they go or not, we hope they go. We got them in. That's our goal. They raised $7 million in scholarships. That's just 113 kids. And yes, some kids took bulk of that money, right? And some kids got very little of it. But if you do the math, on average, that's just incredible. You're talking average $70,000 a kid. Which would pay for OU almost, right? So the work we're doing, we're pretty proud of.
Yeah. The stats are, the stats just speak for themselves, right? When you name those names and you talk about the numbers, just like, it reinforces getting out of bed every day. You're like, yeah, I'm doing something great, making a difference. And then, when you hear about the kids graduating and going on to careers, and like you said, you hear those stories coming back through your social media channels, it makes you feel good, right? Like, it's always nice to be respected, and always nice to be kind of remembered as someone who kind of changed, the course of someone's life, right? And,
that's right.
Just even the catalyst to that, like, it makes a huge difference. So tell me about what's new then, because we're launching a new school, right? Is that what's happening? That's
right. So 2 years, I was with the high school and only the high school for many years, and took over leadership there in 2018. While I was in leadership in different ways, was the headmaster, principal, superintendent. In 2021, with a partnership with Oklahoma City Public Schools, they did that Pathway to Greatness, which was really kind of consolidating a lot of their schools to make the funding more practical, right? With that effort, they also changed grade bands. So middle school went from 6th to 8th grade to 5th through 8th. And Independence Charter Middle School in particular was kind of a sister school for Harding, but wasn't put on paper that it was. And so part of working with Oklahoma City Public Schools, we agreed to merge them into one entity, which is where Harding Independence comes from now. In addition, we added 5th grade to our middle school, so it's 5th through 8th grade now, to kind of match and help families. If they're in an Oklahoma City Public School 4th grade, they don't have to, they know other options day one. But what we kind of discovered now is, everyone thinks college prep is only for high school kids. We kind of realized, middle school is doing just as well and need that kind of exposure at the earlier age, which challenged us to go even further on, well, why not have a kindergartner go to OU? Like, you don't have to say you're going here, but why can't they go on campus and see what college is about? They'll have a different attitude about it, but can you imagine if a group of college kids came and talked to a kindergarten class? They would eat it up, right? I would have. They would be like, wow, look at these adults, and they're so cool. And so the kind of vision for us was, we looked at the model of Oklahoma City. We found that only 20% of all elementary schools, that's public and charter, were a C or below, or sorry, I said that backwards, were a C or above, right? So the rest of them are D or F schools. So meaning that the quality of seats in Oklahoma City are very minimal in elementary, which is why the Harding was created anyway, the quality of seats, right? And so we kind of said, is there an opportunity for us to expand to an elementary school to serve those kids younger and expose them younger? And the question mark was facilities, right? I'm not a big believer in students learn best from home. I think they learn certain skills from parents at best, but they need to be in a school and a social interaction. And so we had a fantastic opportunity. There's a school building just 2 blocks north of our current high school that came available due to a different school kind of closing down, and essentially we got the property for basically interest-free to expand an elementary school. So we plan to open, this is our planning year, and we want to make sure we're successful in 1 year, and so we'll have a founding principal hired within the next few months, hopefully. And then year 2, we're going to be opening up pre-K and K and build them up from there. So we're really excited.
Yeah, that is exciting, right? Like, and just timing and the building becoming available and it being so close, like everything's fallen into place, and you get to be in a real leadership role during this whole time, and see this from the ground up and from the development stages, and planning and getting kids in and everything. Like that's exciting stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, but looking back when you were going to OU your first year, probably the last thing you thought you'd be doing was being, the superintendent and principal of a prep school.
I always dreamed that I would be a principal one day, because that's, the higher you go up, the more impact you can make. You just don't make personal impacts as much, right? But I didn't think that I would get there when I was 27 years old. Yeah. Now I'm 34, and I went from a school of 400 kids to now we're going to be at 1,300 kids. Yeah. Staff of 28 to staff of 80 in the next few years. I didn't think that would be possible or happen. But luckily I've had a community and even staff that worked their tail off. They believed the same thing I did on it's going to take extra work from us to get kids over the hump, and but you have to sell the story, right? So it's real interesting. I'm working on professional development for our teachers next month already to come back. And part of it is I've just asked alumni to send me stories. Send me, how did we impact you? What's the impact of a teacher? Because that's what keeps teachers in the game, right? It's not the money. I think everyone knows that. And so you should see some of these videos of the stories they share. And I've asked them not to share names because I want it to be for all teachers. But of course, they want to share names, and they did. And that's okay. They give some shout outs. And I have an incredible staff that's been there, 90% retention rate. We don't lose teachers very often because we treat them as professionals. We have our kids at a bar this high. We have teachers at a bar this high, but they also know my bar is just as high. No one gets out of that kind of expectation with us.
Yeah. So, looking down the road, you mentioned, one of your mentors, is a professor now. Is that something you want to get into? Do you want to start running universities? Is that as your professional development, as your career, grows, is that something that, come the right time you would consider?
I wouldn't mind getting into maybe a small cohort of up-and-coming educational leaders and growing and teaching them. I think my passion, though, will never be at the full university level. I have a big vision, but hopefully I can get there, is I want every single school in the state of Oklahoma to be a model school. When I read statistics, our schools are ranked top 100 in the whole country. But when you read Oklahoma overall, we're 49th in the whole country. And we got to do something different. What we're doing is not working. So how can we get creative? How can we find the 5 schools that are doing really well in Oklahoma and replicate or model what they're doing for all kids? And it's possible. We just need all the educational leaders get on the same page and not have egos behind us, right? So if you have the results at the end of the day, and that's the same thing as a business model, right? I mean, we look at fast food chains all the time, right? If Burger King's doing something real unique, guess who's doing it next month? That's McDonald's, right? Why aren't we doing that in schools? And there's kind of political answers with that, but I won't get into that too much. But at the end of the day, I want families to quit running to suburbs and past suburbs in Oklahoma City, right? And that's the evolution of the Edmonds and Deer Creeks, and now it's going Piedmont and going further and further out. How can we bring families back to the city? I mean, Oklahoma City, I think Mayor Holt just said the other week that we're top 20 in size and growth. Which is crazy. When I name cities, I don't think of Oklahoma City top 20. Yeah. But I definitely know we're not top 20 in schools. So how do we get them on the same page and have that kind of opportunity here?
So that could be going into legislature and trying to fix it and figure it out that way, right? That seems to be the way to go. Could be.
I think a model we can use. I'm really passionate about what happened in New Orleans after the Katrina storm. And so obviously Katrina wiped out that city. All their schools wiped them out. So they had a fresh start. Mm-hmm. And they were really strategic when they redeveloped education system, they didn't redevelop the same way. They finally realized what we were doing wasn't working. We were, bottom of the barrel. Let's do something different. And so they created kind of college prep schools, art schools, et cetera, and put them on the border of New Orleans. Because at the end of the day, schools, if they don't have money, they don't have resources, right? What it did, though, is they created these own kind of cyclos, and they let that school run it, right? So there's no bureaucracy. They have their own board.
Yeah.
Teachers can make decisions real quickly. It drove the suburbs back, right? So now you're funneling all the suburbs back to the city on the edges, which gave more financial sustainability for the city, which was able to give more to the schools in the middle that needed that extra support, right? So the equitable approach, those kids didn't need as much financial gain because they had families that were supportive, right? And families that were willing to drive them to school, et cetera. But the kids downtown, they didn't have that support. Well, now we have 3 times more funding to give you those extra blocks to be successful. And are they top in the country? No, but they definitely went from, at least half of what they were. Which, is that hard to do? Absolutely, because you got to kind of build new schools and structure. But are we able to model that? And look, no disrespect to Edmonds and such like that. Those communities are built for a reason. What I don't want to see is Oklahoma City become a city that's thriving, but without education right behind it. They have to go together.
Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense, right? When you, like you said, you're the 20th largest city in the country, and you're 49th in schools. There's an issue there, and it's gone on for far too long.
Yeah,
and it seems like it's just kicked down the road every time someone else new comes in, or someone tries to change it, and no one likes change, or whether there's too many superintendents or too many school districts or whatever it is. I'm speaking out of someone who just sees a news article every now and then and doesn't know anything about it. But yeah, the stats. If the stats, they don't lie. Right, like something's being done, and not everybody can afford to send their kid to private school, right? And that's not cheap at all. But at the same time, every parent wants the best for their kid.
That's right.
Something has to happen.
That's right.
Moving away from teaching and your love for OU, how was OU when you were there as a student? What was the teams like? How was it as athletically, and obviously your love from OU going there as well? It just makes it bigger and better. But tell me about that. Tell me about just your Stephen the fan of OU. What's that been like?
Oh man, I was in some glory years while I was a student. I mean, I had the Sam Bradford years. I think 2008 national championship year. I had the opportunity to go to that game in Florida. Went to an away game, Florida State, which that's a crazy place. You ever been to Florida State? That stadium was rocking. Yeah. We won that game. We didn't win the national championship. Obviously, Tim Tebow took that away from us. But OU's just kind of I found my niche there. It's a large place, and you're always going to find your niche. You're not going to be all over the place. And I had a great opportunity to meet several quality people that are still best friends of mine. Some are doctors, accountants, and we see each other once a month or every few months. But one thing that we've kind of decided with our love for OU is, we're going to continue to be football fanatics and be season ticket holders, and that's our opportunity to come back together. So I've been a season ticket holder for, forever now. Much expensive now, more expensive now than when I was a student. But football has kind of always been exciting. It's kind of away from work, but now it's become almost work, because obviously when I go to OU, I always see students now, right? And so, but that's exciting too. I can see them in their glory, and sometimes they'll say, "Come sit in the student section." No, I'm not doing that. No. Yeah, old for that now. But yeah, Sam Bradford, DeMarco Murray. Oh man, Jermaine Gresham. You had so many. Gerald McCoy, I had class with him in 2009, so that was exciting. He's an awesome dude that gives back all the time in Oklahoma City. Just love OU. And now I'm a football fan, but obviously 2008 was the Blake Griffin year, right, in basketball, and I don't think OU's been that far since, ever since Blake Griffin. In fact, I played basketball against Blake Griffin. Did not do well. Just so if everyone knows, I'm like 5'4". But he was
People
just
listening that know you are laughing their heads off.
yeah. He was just at the gym. You know, it was called a Huff at the time. I don't know what they call it now, but him and his brother Taylor were there, just playing with randoms, and I don't know how I got involved. But I will tell you, I shot the most threes I ever did because I wasn't going down low. But that was exciting.
That's hilarious. Yeah, you're like, you know, if you get a point off against Blake Griffin, you're like, hey, it's never going to happen again. But I got a point, you know? I managed to score.
That's right.
That is brilliant. Finishing up, obviously, SEC's coming. Which game are you excited to go to? Which road game are you excited to go to?
For just in general or for the first year?
First year. Which one could you pick for the first year?
Oh, man, away games. You know, I always hear horror stories about LSU, but I'd really like to experience Death Valley myself. That's kind of the big away game I'd love to go to. In terms of home game, you can't beat Alabama coming to OU. That's going to be Crimson versus Crimson.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of thought about, should I sell my ticket, but there's no way I'm going to that game. You know, hopefully both schools. I think Brent Venables is on the right track, you know, in terms of success, especially defense. The recruits he's getting is insane, you know, but kind of we learned, you know, for example, Sam Bradford was a 3-star. It's not always the 5-stars that do it. So hopefully the recruits he's getting that, you know, their 4 or 5 stars can produce just as much as the 3 stars we've been lucky with.
Yeah, I was fortunate to tour the facility a couple of weeks ago, and they have a golf simulator in the locker room. And I was like, okay, I guess the coaches want to hit golf balls, you know, in break, or while the guys are hitting it in the gym, because you kind of go through the locker room and you go into like this kind of kitchenette game room, like an ultimate man cave, pool table, skee ball, you know, the basketball net thing against whatever that game is, the basketball, you know, whatever it is that you see at the fairgrounds. And they had like a full-on golf simulator, and I was like,
wow,
this is impressive. This is not what I expected.
That's right. That's right.
You know, and great experience. And then it was for the golf tournament, one of our pro-am pairing party things that we did. And one thing I had never noticed, and people who will know this if they go on the field, is that the grass in the end zone is a lot softer than the grass on the field.
Really?
Yeah, like you can know as soon as you walk on it, you notice it straight away. And I don't know if they're about to rip up the field and that's why, but like it was spongy, and it makes sense if guys are falling on it. But yeah, it was like noticeably different, like thickness, and it was I was like, yeah. That was the only.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you're next time you go down and you're like close to the field, you can definitely see it when you notice it. But like when you're walking, I was like, I mean, it makes sense. But at the same time, I assume probably they're all like that, since guys falling and you want to break anything, and you know wouldn't be falling.
But they fall everywhere.
Hard Oklahoma dirt or whatever. Yeah, exactly. But that was my takeaway. I thought, you know, what a great place to be, and obviously the stadium's growing, and the city's going to grow, and with the SEC now coming in, it's only going to be good things for Norman and bringing, you know, so much more economic impact to the chamber and the city. So I know this chamber president, Scott, is thrilled to have the SEC.
Oh yeah, well, the city's going to grow with it. Imagine those college towns coming in Norman, but let's be real, Norman has very little opportunities for hotels, so they're going to be coming to the city. And I don't remember who we have: Alabama, Tennessee, I think South Carolina.
Yeah, something like that. Arkansas. Is
Arkansas
in Arkansas? I think the Arkansas game's away.
No, they left Arkansas off the schedule, which I was surprised at.
That's right, because we haven't played, like, OU hasn't played Arkansas in like 50-something years.
Yeah, and that would have been a good rivalry to start back up. So I was surprised at, but obviously they kept Texas on there. I'm missing OU Texas this year. I'm kind of sad about it.
Why is that?
One of my best friends, he's having a baby. We always go together. He's having a baby around that time, so we decided we're not going to go this year, but... Yeah, that'd be sad, but that's a fun game too. Have you ever been there?
Have not. No.
Oh, okay.
I need for me to tick that off.
Well, sounds like you can take my ticket. Go have a good time.
Yeah, definitely. Well, mate, appreciate you coming in. Appreciate you sharing some stories. Just love what you're doing. Love that you're an example to not only me and our leadership class, but the kids as well. Right? Those are the ones that really get to learn from you. But you know, from just being around you and sharing your story and just listening to you speak and the things that you've been through, it makes people realize that, you know, there's a lot more to life, right? There's a lot more things that you can go through. We're stronger than we think, you know, by just putting your head down and focusing on the one thing that you love to do. being happy, right? And it's not all about, making money and being miserable. Like, if you stick your head down, you get your work done, you focus on something you love to do, generally the money follows that, right? And if it doesn't matter, you'll still be okay.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Thank you so much for coming in. For everyone listening, I will put links to the school in the description. People can check that out when it opens. And wish you all the best for in your planning year this year. And next year's going to be open and ready to go.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, man. For everyone listening, we will catch you next episode. Cheers. Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is presented by the Choctaw Nation. The Choctaw people have a rich history and a bright future. At the Choctaw Cultural Center, you can take part in a story 14,000 years in the making. Stroll through our immersive exhibits portraying Choctaw life from the moment our ancestors emerged from the Nani Weha in Mississippian homelands to the Trail of Tears, where we lost so many loved ones, and finally to the modern-day tribe making a positive impact on local communities throughout southeastern Oklahoma. Try your hand at our social dancing and stickball and learn more about our vibrant culture through demonstrations, workshops, and classes. The kids will have a blast in our Luxie Activity Center. The Choctaw Cultural Center is more than a museum. It's a living, breathing experience. Visit choctawculturalcenter.com to plan your visit. This episode is brought to you by Hope is Alive. Hope is Alive exists to radically change the lives of drug addicts, alcoholics, and those who love them. Join us on August 11th at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum for a celebration of hope featuring guest speaker Tim Tebow and musical artist Ben Fuller. Find out more and get your tickets at HIA10.com.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.